Hello and welcome back to the 10th episode of the Select Characters podcast. I'm Sam, and this week I'll be hosting. We're going to give Chris's voice a little break this week and just switch it up a little bit, change things around. So joining me in this virtual studio spanning 2 continents, I've got some of my friends here. I've got Chris.
Hello.
What's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. 10th episode. Awesome.
10th episode. Yeah. They said that 60% of podcasts don't make it this far, but we did.
Yes.
And on my right here, I've got Enrique.
How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm psyched that we're actually at number 10.
Yeah. We did it. High fives all around.
Means we can quit now, right?
That's right. That's all we needed. That's the bucket. Starting up a new podcast next week. Feel free to tune in. It's a podcast about the making of this podcast. And wrapping up the cast, I've got Ryan over there. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Good. Good week for you?
Yeah, it's hot here, over 100 degrees for about 2 weeks now. So it's the worst.
Hot everywhere. Stay indoors and play video games.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So coming up this week, we've got some good topics lined up. And before we get into those, we'll start with what we've been playing. And so, as you already know, the second part of the show, we go on a little bit about what we've been playing. Anybody been at any good games this week?
I actually grabbed Batman Arkham Knight, and holy crap, it's fun.
Yeah, PC or somewhere else?
Well, I said it's fun, so obviously I'm not playing on a PC.
Excellent point.
I originally did have it on PC, and I was actually one of the unfortunate people that had issues with the game. Luckily, Steam refunds worked in full effect, so thank God for that. And I actually ended up picking it up for the PS4 because I just really wanted to play the game, and I'm having a blast with it right now.
Good.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fun. The game definitely ends its M rating, but I like it because it's not done in a very cheap way. It's actually tied to the overall narrative with the game, and it's just a very mature feeling game, which is really rare to see.
So they ended up doing what they promised. They didn't really go for a mature thing just, to be edgy. They went for mature because the narrative sort of lends themselves to do that.
Yeah, it's mature like in terms of themes and narrative, which is really nice to see. It's like I said, it's not, they didn't just throw in a bunch of like torture scenes and blood and gore just for the heck of it, just to say like, oh, let's make Batman edgy and like Dark Knight. It's actually really fun.
Very cool, man. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
I did want to say something though in regards to the refund thing, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard by now that Rocksteady completely halted sales for PC for Arkham Knight. And I've heard a lot of talk, people saying, like, what this means for the industry and stuff like that. And I think this is actually one of the best things that could have happened.
Yeah.
Because up until this point, digital releases, we've had shitty PC ports before, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's, the developers would essentially just say, hey, sorry guys, tough luck, we'll sort it out eventually, and you're out your $60.
Yeah, they can't really get away with it anymore now.
Nope.
Exactly, because before, even if like they released a poor, port on console or whatever like that, when you return the game to like a GameStop or Best Buy, the developers already have their money. That studio already saw the money.
Yeah. At
that point, you're only getting your money back from the actual brick and mortar store. So the fact that you have Steam allowing refunds and that other digital distributors like Green Man Gaming were actually following in suit, I think that is a big eye opener for a lot of developers now. And hopefully, we'll see them taking a lot more care with future PC releases.
I really hope so. This has been unprecedented. Isn't it? That they actually halted the sales.
Yeah.
Well, dude, it was down to 32%, I think, aggregate on Steam reviews.
Shit.
Well, people are going to jump back on that. They're going to vote it right back down, but it's good that consumers have a way to strike back at least.
Yeah, and I think it's fair if they, if they re-release the game or whatever and it's working fine, they should get a clean slate in terms of reviews.
Maybe.
Well, they're trying their hardest to rectify all the mistakes that they've made, going as far as to pull the game off the stores. So when they put it back up there, you'd think that it would be in a working state then, and they deserve to, get treated like it's a clean slate.
I'll tell you what, though, that's something that I haven't seen before, is that like would they post that very clear roadmap, like, oops, we're sorry, and this is how we intend to fix it, and here's what we're going to do. Like, you can tell that they understood that people were pissed, and that's awesome. Like, now consumers have a club that they can wield against this stuff, although it could also have the other effect of people maybe choosing not to make a PC port if they don't want to spend the resources to do it right. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I did think about that because now that you have like the refund thing looming over their heads, a lot of people might just not bother with it. So that could definitely be the the poor way it goes down.
It'd be an unexpected consequence. Yep. So, Ryan, any good gaming this week?
Yeah, actually, I took a break from Counter-Strike, which is a big deal for me, and I went through my Steam backlog, and I looked through all my games, and I decided to finally play Spec Ops: The Line.
Ah, that's a good game.
And I'm not done with it yet. I don't even know how far I'm into. I played, 3 or 4 hours, and the story has me absolutely hooked. Like I get frustrated when I can't play it, which is terrible right now because I'm super busy. But the story has me absolutely hooked. The mechanics, they're whatever. I feel like some of the gameplay's kind of clunky, but maybe that's still because I'm working through the controls. But I'm totally hooked on that game, and I love it so far. And I've heard it's amazing. So
yeah, it's a pretty run-of-the-mill third-person shooter, but the story is amazing.
Actually,
really
since
good.
you played that recently, you probably have it fresh in your mind. Let me ask you a question, because I've heard some people argue that the controls do feel very generic. It feels like just another Call of Duty, Battlefield clone, whatever. But I've heard a lot of people say that because of the way the story is presented, that kind of like really basic gameplay is almost intentional, like to be kind of a self-aware parody of shooters like Call of Duty and stuff. Like, do you feel that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that didn't really come to my mind while I was playing. I think you could make a very strong argument for that. I do, if I'm going to say anything towards that, I do appreciate the simplicity of the controls. Just because kind of like in last episode, I feel like FPSs get kind of convoluted after a while. But I think for me, the biggest issue was I found myself getting stuck like behind barriers, and then I would press a control to move out, and then to move like to the side again, and it would like lock me into that barrier, and I was just popping in and out. Like that kind of stuff kind of bothers me, but I really do appreciate how simple the controls are, because it lets you focus on just playing the game.
If they want the focus to be on story, then I guess it makes sense to just, even if it's not an intentional parody, but just to grab some boilerplate FPS stuff, throw it in there, and then build your story on top of that, because that's obviously not your focus.
Well, it's definitely not bad. I mean, the mechanics are decent. It's not bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just, unexceptional.
It was fun for me because I'm so used to playing Twitch shooters that it was just refreshing to play a shooter that wasn't... I wasn't relying on my mechanics in order to do well.
Okay.
So, I mean, in Counter-Strike, you're doing like... you're trying to outmaneuver people and do these flick shots with your wrist and all that crap, but... In Spec Ops: The Line, it's like I was thinking more about moving to different barriers and which guy to take out first, and controlling my allies and that kind of thing. And it was just refreshing. It was a different way to play FPSs.
Awesome. A little more methodically paced shooter.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good, man. Anything else?
No, I played a little bit of Counter-Strike and lost a bunch, so that's actually what led me to play games in my Steam log.
There it is. I knew if I dig a little deeper, I'd get to it.
Oh yeah, I was mad. I was in a bad mood.
So Chris, video games, huh?
I actually bought 2 new games. Well, one's an expansion to a game that I play every now and then, and the other is a completely new game. I bought The Crew. That is not a game that I wanted to buy when it first came out, because I played the beta and it didn't really seem like a €60 game to me. So when I saw it was on sale and I had a coupon from my local game shop, so I bought it for $29. And yeah, that's all right. It's sort of an MMO-ish thing, but the racing mechanics are really, really bare bones. It doesn't really control all that well. And racing games, even arcade ones, are sort of tactical, aren't they? Like the races, you sort of, it's a pretty tactical experience. And The Crew is definitely not that. There are weird upgrade mechanics and stuff. Before you even start racing, the game tells you, like, you can earn money in this game, or alternatively, you can buy the Ubisoft Fun Bucks to unlock stuff quicker. Yeah, that was kind of annoying. So for about 9 hours, I didn't particularly enjoy playing the game until I started a race, and the info on the race told me this is going to take you more than 1 hour. This is a race that's going to start in Detroit, and you're going all the way through Colorado, through the Grand Canyon to New York, I think it was. And
that sounds cool.
That was incredible. I just put on a podcast, and I just started driving, just started doing this race. And it was amazing. So it's not a great racing game, but it's a fantastic road trip game.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to jump back in because races like that are pretty cool. I mean, the map is incredibly vast. It is incredibly vast. So there's a lot of stuff to see and a lot of stuff to do. You know, the gameplay's serviceable, but not great. But I don't know. The road trip aspect of it makes it worth it for me.
Cool.
And the other thing that I bought was I had a short moment of what I can only describe as a delirium. When I woke up from that delirium, I bought 60 Days of World of Warcraft and Warlords of Draenor.
Whoa.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
What made you want to buy it?
Yes. I don't know. I just woke up one morning and I was in a mood, I guess. And, you know, I still read the patch notes like you, Enrique, even though I don't play a game anymore. I still like to keep, you know, tabs on it to see how it's doing. And 6.2, patch 6.2 is out now. And I don't know, it just seemed sort of interesting to me, so I just bought it. And it is pretty cool. I like it. There's a lot more voice acting now. There's a lot more scripted events out in the world as well. So it feels 2015.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
So initial impressions are good then, huh?
It is, yeah. I'm still in Frostfire Ridge, which is the first actual big zone that you're in, and you get your garrison. And your garrison is actually a fun little mini game, but I've been told that it's starting to wear on you after 80 or 90 hours.
It does. It almost becomes like a Facebook game where you're just logging on to queue up like tasks, collect your resources, then you log out.
Yeah, exactly. But I did miss it, though. I logged in, and I was in a city. I think I logged back into the Undercity.
Okay.
And the first thing I saw was trade chat, and it was full of people debating when it's okay to call someone a retard or not. And I'm like,
jeez.
World of Warcraft, please never change.
They put out the banners for you.
So you just take a big whiff of the air, like, yeah,
Yep.
that's trade chat.
So I'm having a good time with it. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I've got at least 2 months ahead of me that I'm going to devote to playing World of Warcraft and the crew. And that's basically all I've been playing this week.
Awesome, man. Well, for me, I have been trapped in a house with no internet. And a little bit of backstory. About a year and a half ago was when I got my first kind of beastly PC. And before that, I had an old laptop, and I happened to bring the old laptop with me to this vacation destination with no internet. And I got back into some old games that had updated since I'd played them last. So I've been having the best week of gaming ever.
Oh.
I've been playing, I'll just run the list down, man. I've been playing Neo Scavenger. I've been playing Unreal World, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, Might and Magic 6, Keeper RL. Just having a blast. Yeah, you see what I mean? Like, all these games I put down.
Dude, Might and Magic 6 was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course it was. All these games are amazing, and a lot of them were still in development when I stopped playing them like a year and a half ago. Got this beastly new PC and wanted to play, you know, the games that would push that thing a little bit, and stopped sort of playing under the constraints of having a crappy old laptop. But I've been having such a satisfying week of gaming that I'm starting to think I got a little misled. Just, you know, tile-based roguelikes I think are my jam, because I've been happier playing video games this week than ever. And, at nighttime, me and my wife have been chasing the platinums in Pikmin 3, so that's been a hell of a challenge, too.
Nice.
Oh.
The timing on that stuff is so tight, man, to the point that we've got like a whiteboard trying to chalk out where we need to go and when. Yeah, it's like microsecond kind of cooperative timing. That game is way more fun than I thought it would be.
I've never actually played Pikmin, because I never really owned a Nintendo console. So what is it about?
You are a little spaceman, and you control these little plant monsters, the titular Pikmin, and they're in different colors and have different abilities, and you sort of manage, you know, around 50 to 100 of them at a time, and you send them off to pick up fruits and carry them back to your space capsule.
Right.
And so, at least in the co-op mode that we're playing, we each have a little astronaut man, and it's like time management. Like, it takes 10 dudes to carry this apple, it takes 5 dudes to carry this lemon, but the red dudes can't go in the water where the lemon is. So you have to plan it all out, because you only have 7 minutes, and you got to get all the fruit back to your little space station.
Right.
So that's all it is. It's just one of those, but really adorable, really nice looking.
Sounds Nintendo as fuck.
Yep.
It's Nintendo as fuck. That's 100% correct, but we love it. And it's been fist clenching, just really intense stuff. So that's been a lot of fun. It's been a great week in gaming for me.
Awesome.
Well, all right, everybody. So what do you guys say we get down to the topics?
Let's do it.
All right.
Cool. I guess first thing I want to talk about is kind of a more open-ended question where it brought about from what people were talking about with Fallout 4 having a voice protagonist this time around as opposed to the kind of blank slate you start off with previous games. And it kind of got me thinking of the use of the protagonist in a lot of RPGs and games that we have and how, I guess, there's a certain level of anonymity that's established to each one. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what are some good examples of it and what, I guess, are your favorite examples where it's been done?
Well, it's a decision of how much you want the player to inhabit that character. Like, how much they want to think it's them inside that virtual world versus, you know, like them experiencing somebody else's perspective. And there's all kinds of different ways to do it, all the way back to when you could rename a character in an RPG to when there's like a full custom character creator. There's definitely sort of a narrative tool there that's used in just a whole host of different ways.
Yeah, I think, like, for me, for example, like, one of my favorite things that I've seen done in recent years is, I guess you've seen that character anonymity as a kind of like an essential part of the narrative where, you know, you start off with a pre-made character who has a history that you don't really know about until about, you know, halfway through the game or at the very end of the game, and you find out that blank slate of your character suddenly has all these implications to the overall story. Some examples of that is, you know, Alucard from, you know, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, the Point Man character from the Fear franchise, the player character from the original Bioshock, Revan from Star Wars Old Republic. So, you know, they're characters that when you start off with, you know, like, they have almost no background. You know, you start off with this mysterious character, and then partway through the story, they kind of reveal what your character's true motivations are, and it kind of has a really cool twist on the overall, like, narrative where you suddenly find a whole nother dimension to the story because you gain this knowledge on your character.
Yeah, I think it's a difference between the silent character that you want the player to inhabit and the silent character who is supposed to be a character in the story. So, like, say in Pokemon, like, you just name the character whatever you want. You're just a silent hero who goes through the story. And like Master Chief, who is a silent character, but he has a lot of depth to him, and there's a lot of things you don't know, and they reveal things about him to, you know, serve as a narrative device to, you know, improve the story. And I think, like I said, I think there's a difference between those two things, and they both have their place. I think I prefer the Master Chief type of character rather than just the silent hero.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, say very little, but he has a really good backstory for you to start off from, right?
And what you get is like the video game version of like a first-person frame story. Like, if you were reading it, it would say, I did this and I did that, and I fought the flood at the ring, you know, and all this stuff. Because you actually inhabit that character because he's quiet and he doesn't talk, and you can sort of say, oh, all right, cool, that's me under that helmet. And it being first person doesn't, you know, take away from that. It actually helps. And what's interesting is even places where they then flip that later. So you inhabit it like as this first person frame story, and then all of a sudden you realize it wasn't really you, it was actually the character all along, even though you thought it was you, which Bioshock's a great example of that.
Oh, yes.
Well, you know, Master Chief is a really interesting example because I guess the way his character is used, I think, has changed throughout the different installments, because I think it's definitely, like Ryan was saying, it starts off where he is that character that, you know, even though he has his own background story, you're living the game through his eyes, and they do that by giving you very little information on him. So in a way, you can kind of attribute your own personality to the character. But and I think it's actually been since Bungie left and 343 took over, where they've been focusing more on fleshing out Master Chief, at least in-game, where you see more focus on his background, on his story. I mean, Halo 4 had, like, that whole intro cinematic talking about, like, the Spartan program and more about Chief's personality. Halo 5 Guardians looks like it's going to be very heavily influenced on Master Chief himself, and I guess more fleshing out the character story. So it's kind of interesting how they've taken that use and changed it throughout the years.
Yeah, they changed it. They changed him from being just an audience surrogate to an actual protagonist in a very tasteful way. You know, it's not an intrusive character in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't speak all that often. When he does, he has an amazing voice, by the way. But they give you just enough to consider him an actual character instead of just an extension of you as a player.
But when they do that, it's interesting because then the player gets relegated to observer instead of participant.
Well, not really true though, because in the end you are still controlling his actions, and you will always refer to what is being done in the game as you doing that. It just gives you, like, because Master Chief is a bit more of a character now, it gives you a little bit more context as to your place in the world.
I was reading a book recently about I never played Grand Theft Auto, what was it, 4 with Nikolai? He was in 4. Yeah.
Right.
So the author, it was a book by Tom Bissell, and he's writing about how when he was playing as Nikolai, who isn't exactly a silent character, but when he was playing as Nikolai, he saw that Nikolai was like an independent character from himself, and the decisions he was making in game, like he would say instead of what would I do in this situation, he would make decisions based on what Nikolai would do. And I think when the character you inhabit is, I mean, their own character, they have their own identity, I think that changes the way we play them a little bit.
Makes it easier to role play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You end up making that character's decisions the way that character would make them in your mind, rather than what you would do. And I find myself doing that in games all the time.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm saying about being relegated to observer versus like, even though you are like, you have influence, but you're observing more than you're participating.
I don't know. I just prefer to play actual characters with a personality and background and clear motivations. And I always enjoy just doing stuff that the character would do in that world. I think that is way more enjoyable than having a completely silent protagonist that is essentially me without the ability to speak.
I don't know, like, I think it definitely depends on the medium, because Call of Duty is a perfect example of this, where you have a character that's a silent protagonist who is supposed to be you, but it's really interesting because in that scenario, you actually have no role to play so much in the story, because it's one of the first, because I think it was, I don't know if it was Modern Warfare or one of the earlier Call of Duties, but it was the first time you've actually seen a game where your character is just kind of like an extra, and you're surrounded by this cast of really colorful, personalities. You have Ghost, you have all these, like your commander, and they're very fleshed out characters, and it's almost like you're just there as, you get the feeling that this game or like the story being told would occur regardless of whether you were there or not, and you're just there as a witness to everything.
That makes it almost more believable in a way.
I mean, it's weird because, like Call of Duty obviously is not exactly known for its, breaking stories or anything like that. But at least for me, just playing those games from that perspective, I actually tend to enjoy it a little bit more because, you're almost, it doesn't really depend on you. You're just kind of seeing the events unfold around you.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's easier for me to suspend my disbelief and see myself as a person in that world than it is for me to see myself as, one of the main plot driving super characters in it.
Yeah. In the case of Call of Duty, it sort of makes sense with the context as well, because you're part of the army and you're just another cog in a grand wheel. I think that works kind of well, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt like Modern Warfare, I've played that campaign 5 or 6 times through, and I think it's because you start off as, just a new, an FNG, you start off as a nobody, and through the actions you take in the game, you become this big hero. Yeah. It's not like somebody saying you need to save the world because you're a hero. It's, you start off as a nobody who's being ordered around, and then by your actions you become a hero. And I think that's something that's really appealing about Call of Duty.
And you see that to a lesser extent in The Witcher too, where like you are Geralt, who's kind of a big deal in his little circle, but outside of him, the world just kind of spins on its own.
I think he's an interesting character to play as well, because you get to have a say in what Geralt says and what he does, but every option you have, even though all of them are wildly different, they still make sense for the character, which I thought was really well done. That's just great writing.
So you guys, as far as inhabiting the protagonist, do you tend to, like, when you're given a selection, do you pick what you want to watch happen, or do you pick what you think that character would actually do?
It depends.
I think it depends on how well that particular character is written, because if I am presented with a player character that has such a strong personality, it almost overrides my own. But I'm trying to think of examples, and you see it a lot in RPGs, like Master Shepard.
It's Commander Shepard, sir. Unless he got demoted.
Oh, which actually happened in the third one, right?
Well, I don't know. There's so much sexual harassment flowing in that ship. I'm surprised he didn't get demoted. No, but like Commander Shepard, though, I mean, it's a perfect example where he's supposed to be this big war hero, and he's supposed to have kind of this background personality on it, but they leave it up to you, so it almost feels like there's no real point into his character being there to begin with. Like, he shouldn't even be a named character at that point.
Yeah, he speaks, but he's not really a character. He's more of a blank slate.
Yeah, so I mean, like with him, for example, I mean, it's easy just to do like whatever you want, or just pick an arbitrary, like, do I want to be good or evil this gameplay? Because he's just such a monochromic character. But someone like Geralt, for example, I say Geralt of Rivia, he's got a particular sense of honor. He's, in terms of the witching deals, how he handles his business transactions, how he handles. It's easier for you to kind of stop and think like, oh man, what will Geralt do in this situation?
Yeah, I think it's better if you play a character that is really well written and has an actual personality. I think it's easier to become immersed in the games that you play. And, games are a form of escapism. And what better way to escape from real life than playing somebody else?
But you're sort of always on the sidelines, too. Like, you are the third party in this transaction who's actually observing and controlling the whole thing, which is a unique perspective as far as how much of your consciousness you send into the character you're controlling and, like, how much you inhabit them and what you do with that once you're there. Like, how do you guide them? Like, in a way, this is what I would do? Or do you guide them in a way like, this is what I want to see the story do? And maybe that's different for different people. I always have a fully kind of above it neutral effect, like I'm playing with toys or something, like just watching what happens when I do this. And I never really think about it from the perspective of I am this person going through this thing. Even with the most like full on tabula rasa kind of character generation, I'm still very separate from that.
No, but I mean, it's kind of interesting. I guess, so do you see a difference when you have a character like, you're the Dragonborn from Skyrim, where it's just pick your race and whatever you want to do, versus, pre-established characters that you just get to modify a little bit at creation?
Yeah, it's all about the same. I mean, really, for me. But what I think, people have different perspectives on that stuff, and there are people who, want to roleplay and inhabit the character and the world and all that stuff, but you guys already know that's not me. But what I think is the most interesting about the sort of silent protagonist or the blank, slate that the player inhabits in the character is when they do the flip, like when you're playing Metroid and the whole time you don't know basically anything about who Samus is or anything like that, and you play through the whole game and then like at the end, if you beat it fast enough, she takes off her helmet and there's a girl under there, and then you're like, wait a minute, like this character that I was projecting onto this whole time is nothing like what I thought I was projecting into.
I need to say that blew my mind when I was a kid and I found out Samus was a girl.
Blew everyone's mind.
That was it was a life-changing event. It's still to this day, I'm in shock.
Yeah. And I like to think like they had a little bit of like insight into what was going on when people play video games, like from a mental perspective. And they realized, wait a minute, we can just like flip the script on everybody. And I don't know if they saw it, from these sort of terms like we're talking about, like inhabited consciousness and stuff, but they knew like something about the way that when people play video games, they put themselves into it and what it would mean to, upset those expectations,
subvert them. Yeah,
with something so simple too.
Oh, exactly.
Just something as simple as changing the gender.
Yeah, going back to Samus as a character, do you think in general because we talked about Master Chief and that transition that it's been happening with his character, where he goes from that generic kind of soldier to a more fleshed out character in the more recent installments. Do you think there's a big risk involved when I guess writers tend to go make that transition? Because I remember with for example, you have Samus. She's always been kind of a blank slate character. You have her history in terms of like, she's a bounty hunter, she does this, but there's never really been a lot of insight into her actual personality. And then Other M came out, and Other M kind of gave you created this whole backdrop for her, where it presented her, her personality. She could be kind of petulant at times, and I know it got a lot of negative backlash from, the community saying like, oh no, this is a terrible story, this is how Samus is. And I find like almost when you have those neutral characters, people tend to kind of ascribe their own ideals of what the character would be like.
Yeah.
So when you see them fleshed out from a developer standpoint, and it doesn't match your ideal, I think it can be like a really big point of contention for characters.
I think it's always a bit awkward when they are completely silent and devoid of any personality. Plus, if a character's got a personality, it becomes a lot easier to love the character. The character becomes more memorable if you spend 30 or 40 hours playing with him or helping the character going to where he or she needs to go. I think that is way more interesting, and and I don't really know why people would be upset about that.
Well, again, I think they're upset because of the fact that with Samus, they didn't give you a template of how her personality was supposed to be like. So I felt like a lot of people just kind of attributed their own ideal of what the personality was, which is fine.
Yeah, it was like a subtle thing. It's like a subtle thing that you like about the game, but you couldn't really put words on why you liked it. But
yeah, and then they release Other M, and it completely overwrites any kind of attributes that you could have applied to the character with their own.
So it doesn't mean they're wrong. You know what I mean? If they're making the canon and what they have made is, then they're telling you what's up. Okay, you might not like it, but they still have like the author voice in that experience. But it's akin to all of a sudden making like the 4th game in a series, and now when you jump, you don't have any air control. Right? Like it's a radical change.
Right. I'm still waiting for the day that Freeman is going to talk. And I don't mean in Freeman's mind, but in an actual game. Yeah, I know.
I mean, like, do you think that can even happen at this point, just because of how long, and how established the character is now? He's literally the silent protagonist. Do you think it would ruin it if, the game comes out and suddenly they have a voice actor that sounds nothing like you thought Gordon Freeman would sound like?
I don't know. Like, usually today, if you play a named character, they've got full voice acting most of the time, right? I mean, of course, not every game has that, but as a general rule, most modern protagonists, named protagonists, have got full voice acting. So if Half-Life 3 is ever going to come round, I won't be surprised if they add in voice acting, but I won't be surprised if they don't do it.
I feel like there's certain games where like that method wouldn't work because of how established the silent protagonist is. I mean, imagine Legend of Zelda if they were to apply voices at that point. How weird it would be to have the character of Link speaking.
Yeah, now that you say that, I'm wondering what they do with the Final Fantasy VII remake, because Cloud was pretty silent.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think they'll put voices in that game.
I don't know. I feel like they almost have to at this point because of like how much they're boasting it's a remake or remaster of it, that they need to modernize it. And I think part of that modernization means including the voiced actor to convey the personality of the character.
I hope they do it. I don't know if you've seen the Final Fantasy VII film, Advent Children.
Yeah,
the English voice cast is really good. So I hope they get all those guys on, especially Vincent Valentine. Oh, that voice!
But there's nothing you can do that really pushes a player out of the mind of the player character more than giving them a voice, like giving them voice acting. At that point, it becomes almost impossible for you to inhabit them in a first-person kind of way, where you would say, I.
Yeah, especially when that character has been already established as a silent character. I mean, with the case of Fallout 4, it's different because you're starting with a brand new character, so that's a moot point. But again, if they were suddenly to come out with Half-Life 3 and Gordon Freeman is suddenly fully voiced, how weird would that be?
It would be strange, definitely.
But it's a choice. I mean, it's a creative choice that they can make, and it obviously changes things in different ways. But when they're speaking, they're not you anymore. That's why Half-Life was so amazing from the get-go, was like locked into first-person perspective. You're not talking, you're just watching the events happen around you.
Right.
I think I've been thinking about this the whole time we've been talking. This is why I think Lee from The Walking Dead is such a fantastic character, because at least I'm racking my brain to try to find something that kind of disagrees with it, but every decision you make for Lee, everything he says after that falls in line with that decision that you made.
Right.
And I think that kind of bridges the gap between the silent character and someone being voice acted feeling like they're not you. Because that's the only game I've ever played where I felt like Lee was a separate character, but at the same time, I was like playing, like inhabiting that in almost a first person kind of way.
Yeah, you actually influence the canon.
Yeah, and I think it's because there's no disconnect between your decisions and what Lee ever says.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's a good point, because you do run into that sometimes in games where you think you know where something is headed, and then it goes off the rails and goes some way completely different.
Mass Effect does that an awful lot, and Dragon Age by extension.
And you're right, that was really well done in The Walking Dead, and it lets you more fully inhabit that sort of observer controller kind of role.
So I want to talk about episodic content, because it seems to be, the flavor of the month. More and more games are starting to use the episodic format, and I actually love it. And I know for a fact that one of us doesn't like it at all, and that is Enrique.
Can't stand it.
Why?
I do not like it. I like my gaming experiences to be self-contained, and I just don't like it to be dragged on like that.
So to take it back, why do you think that they do episodic content? Let's start there. What is the design goal for putting out a game in an episodic form?
I think it's easier for a developer to do episodic content because, you know, when you've got a really big task, in this case a game, or just any task, think of any task, it's easier if you just, you know, hack it into small pieces and take on one piece at a time. So I think it makes it easier on the developer to do it in an episodic format.
So if they were to not release it episodically, then the actual release date of the game would be, what, like a year behind when the first episode came out or something like that?
Could be. I don't know for sure.
I don't know. I feel like with a lot of episodic content, though, it opens the window for the developer to just sell you a season pass and not deliver on a product until they feel like it.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a limit, you know? There's got to be a limit to how long, I mean...
Double fine.
How long is it going to take?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like one of a big distaste that I have for episodic content, because like I said, I like my gaming experiences to be self-contained, and I like to have control over the pacing of it. So if I'm playing, you know, a game a 30-hour RPG, whatever, I might not necessarily sit there and play it for 30 hours straight, but I have control of when I want to sit down, when I want to play it, how much content I want to consume it, at what pace. With episodic content, it's this feeling where you're given a small piece of it, you consume it, and then you're just left waiting for whenever they feel like releasing. Like, you know, it's not like TV where it's a serialized schedule where you know where it's going to come out. You don't know how many episodes are going to be on beforehand. You know, they don't have a set deadline for it. It's literally just everything's up in the air, and that, for me, that frustrates me. Sorry, I'm getting very heated. I really dislike episodic content.
Oh, that's fair enough. Like, I understand why. I just don't really agree with it, because I like episodic content in games for the same reason that I like episodes in TV shows, and that is in between the episodes. Like, I think that episodic content breeds a tighter community, if you know what I mean. Because every time I finish an episode of either a TV series or of an episodic game, I really love to interact with the community, like the fandom of that game, to sort of theorize what's going to happen next and stuff like that. I really, really like that. And that is one of the biggest pulls for me. Plus, I think that episodic content, each episode can have a stronger theme, and that it allows them to be a little more experimental with each episode.
You mean like it can let them develop it on like as they go, I guess?
Yes, exactly. They
Do you think they do that?
Well, yes, I know for a fact that happened, because Life is Strange, the second episode, got delayed quite some time because it leaked, and I get the feeling that they did change a lot of things around according to player feedback on episode 1. So it gives them a decent amount of flexibility. If you just deliver a full game and people don't like it, people just don't like it, and now you can react to the feedback you get from the people in your fan base.
Yeah, if they're doing that though, that is a really interesting decision to make.
But see, and that bothers me then, because what you end up having is it's not like they're releasing one big game in short segments. They're selling you like little shitty DLCs almost for each episode. You know, unless you buy the season pass, you're gonna have to go out and buy every single section individually, and it's not like a TV show where, you know, like I said, it's all presented to you at once and it eventually comes out. It's, you know, you're buying everything separately, and I think that itself can fragment the community.
That's not what I have found, especially not in the Life is Strange community.
I don't know, like, see, because for me, it feels like that community is behind a paywall for you. Because let's say episode 2 comes out, you are not going to be able to interact with the episode 2 community until you buy episode 2.
That's definitely true. But if you're a part of that community, you are probably on board for the ride anyway, or else you wouldn't be part of the community.
No, not necessarily, because I mean, like I said, like for me, that was one of the distastes of it, because and I'm in the same way where, like, when I'm playing a game, I love to interact with the community. You know, I check if the game has a subreddit, I'll go on forums because I like talking to other people.
Right.
I love the theory crafting and everything.
But even the games that you have played that way, like let's say it's a 60-hour RPG, you're not going to interact with people who have gotten farther than you are because you don't want spoilers. It's the same sort of gate.
No, it's not, because the difference is I can eventually get to that point without having to drop more money.
I guess so.
Well, you're putting down more money up front.
Yeah.
Am I?
If you're paying $60 for an RPG and $5 for the first season of a game, you're still paying for the upcoming content. It's just upfront.
I think that if you wanted to talk about it in those terms, like as far as gating what parts of the community are talking to each other, episodic content would actually give you more shared knowledge in the way that nobody could know more than you did at that point. So you'd be coming at it with more of a common ground kind of perspective. It's
okay.
Yeah. Plus, it just lends itself for more theorizing amongst yourselves, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. It's the delay thing, and it's the like having to wait to get more of the thing you like. But
yeah, like I guess
there's something to be said for expectation, man. Like, I mean, as part of the human experience, expectation can like make something better. I don't know if they're using that to make creative decisions in that way. And also the fact that it's not on a regular schedule takes away some of the fulfillment that you get from that sense of expectation.
Yeah, and like for me, you can only really like, I don't know, I feel like when there's that unexpected delay where, you don't know how much time is going to be between episodes, I feel like a lot of that hype and just community discussion expectation kind of dies down.
Yeah, that's my, I mean, if I had to pick, I like episodic content, but if I had to pick my biggest gripe, it's that you don't know when the new episode is coming. And for me, it's like, I wish they would have the whole game done and then release it on a regular schedule, because I do think introducing gaps in between episodes so people can, theorize and get pumped about the next episode is a good thing. And I think it's something, new to games that this genre's brought in. But I mean, you could say that it doesn't allow them any flexibility. Like I think Chris was saying, in Life is Strange, they kind of change the story because something happened, or other games may change the story based on audience reaction. But the way I feel about it, if someone's telling me a story, it's like, tell me the story you want to tell. Don't tell your story based on how I feel about it.
I feel the same way.
So I think so. For me, it's like, make your story, separate it into segments, and release it on a regular schedule so we can have that awesome community interaction in between episodes. But don't, like, I remember playing The Walking Dead. I didn't know anything about episodic content, and I started playing it, and I got to like episode 2, and then after that ended, I was like, where's the rest of the game? And I kind of went into it blind, obviously. And
it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, okay, cool, it'll be here in like 2 weeks. But then it was like April, and they said, yeah, next episode will come in June. And I was like, wait, that's way too long. And when June came, I had to play through both episodes again to just remember what happened and then play episode 3.
Hype didn't die down, though, in between episodes.
No.
But I do get what you are saying. I know where you're coming from, but all the things that bother you don't really bother me.
Well, I mean, I understand. It's a difference of opinion at that point. But like I said, it's just, and I guess going back to what Sam was saying, or where you guys were saying about how this, paying $60 now versus paying it like in the long run. I think another reason I don't really prescribe to that point of view is because I look at the way a lot of those episodic games are written, they're written to have like little mini self-contained story arcs within each episode. Yeah. So it almost feels like, you're playing like, Mass Effect 1, then Mass Effect 2, however many months later, then Mass Effect 3 afterwards. Whereas opposed to those other games, it's, they wrap up that entire story in a longer experience. So for me, it doesn't feel like I'm paying, like I'm waiting for the next episode of the game. It feels like I'm waiting for like little sequels coming out. And I guess from that perspective, it frustrates me because I feel like I'm just getting fed like these short little bits of the story. And I'm not trying to criticize like the content of the said games, because I love Wolf Among Us to this day. It's probably one of my favorite installments, the Walking Dead series. But again, those are games that I buy the full package once it's released, like months down the line, and I sit it and I consume it at my own pace.
Yeah, that's fair. I just like to get in early, and I'm along for the ride, because I don't know. I play enough games to not really care about one of the games that I like being cut into little pieces. I don't really mind. And I don't know. I just think the format lends itself to be more experimental with each episode and stuff.
Yeah, that's if they were actually working on it in between, though, which only makes the release schedule more unpredictable if that's what they're doing.
At least Life is Strange is sort of dependable, because their rule is every 6 weeks.
That's something I could get behind. You get the benefit of expectation, and you get the benefit of building community, but having that regular schedule gives you an anchor point that is really important, stops people from getting frustrated.
Yeah, I think at least for me, if we saw more episodic games that were like that on a set schedule, saying, hey, we're releasing this many episodes and, this much time in between them, and they stuck to that schedule, I think, at least for me, it would do a lot to curb my frustration against it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I go to look at episodic games now, if it's on like the first or second episode, I don't tend to buy it.
Yeah, see, exactly.
Because I don't want to wait. That's not saying like I won't wait, like, because when I play those games, I don't want to play them all the way through in one sitting, but I would rather be able to play one episode one day, give it a couple days, and then play the next. But at the same time, I really like that gap where everyone's all excited for the next episode.
Exactly.
But I think where what dissuades me from buying it is there's no schedule. That's like the main thing for me. Is I really wish they would move, all games of this kind would move to a set schedule.
You know, and I definitely mirror those feelings because even like on the Steam sale, looking through some titles and like Life is Strange looked awesome. But when I saw it was like on episode 2 of the content, I immediately lost interest because I'm like, I don't even want to bother with this. I'll buy it when the story's out.
That's fair. And until that happens, I'm going to keep on pestering you about it.
I mean, like I'm not trying to criticize like their methodology because obviously it's a good method for Telltale's. It's worked wonderfully for them. But it just, for me, I guess I'm an impatient gamer, and I don't like to wait for my content.
That's absolutely fair enough. Like I said, I understand why you feel the way you do, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no good or bad in this situation. It's just what you prefer. And I really prefer episodic content for, well, at least narrative-intensive games, because it sort of works. And I like it that a lot of those games have, like, they sort of feel like a TV show. And I'm not saying that should be all right for all games. Like, I'm not saying that games should just mirror movies and TV, because they shouldn't. But in this particular instance, I really enjoy that format, and I think it translates really well to that type of game. It translates really well to The Walking Dead. It translated really well to The Wolf Among Us, and it translates really well to Life is Strange.
Yeah, I think this genre of games, say whatever your preferences are about scheduling and pricing, say whatever that is that fits what you think is ideal. I think this genre is very powerful in terms of narrative in games, like in terms of being told a story, not necessarily inhabiting a story. But I think if a developer wants to tell you a story and make you a part of it at the same time, I think this genre is extremely powerful.
I mean, I guess going along with that, because we keep kind of talking about if they were on a more set schedule, like a TV show and all that. How do you guys feel about the idea that Telltale is actually going to be partnering with I forget what studio it is, but they're partnering to create a TV show / game hybrid series?
Really?
Oh. Yeah. The idea is that they are basically going to release like this hybrid where a new episode of the show would always be released with like the new episode of the game. And I guess like you could...
It's Marvel. That's who. I just looked it up.
Is it Marvel?
Oh. Marvel and Telltale. Yeah, they're making Marvel announces video game partnership with Telltale Games.
Oh, interesting.
April 23rd.
But is that the one for the show?
Telltale's partnering with everybody.
Because I'm trying to find it.
I cannot find that.
Okay, because there's one. There's one where like they actually mentioned that Telltale is actually going to create a TV show, and they're going to release these episodes of the game alongside episodes of the TV show, and you can either, I guess, passively watch the show, or you can actually have an active role in the show by playing the game, and it influences.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, how do you guys feel about that kind of take on it?
Well, it's certainly unique. I've never heard of something like this before. Like, you have that TV show, that sci-fi TV show that influenced the MMO.
Obviously, yeah. What is that?
Defiance.
Yeah, Defiance. That was it. But that's on a whole different level than this. Like, if Telltale is going to be involved, then the writing will most likely be excellent, because it's usually at least above decent.
See, okay,
I'd be interested to see how this pans out.
Here's a quote from like AV Club had a little bit of a little blurb on it, and it says, "Yeah, according to I guess Telltale CEO Brunner, it says if you play the interactive episode first, certain elements of the scripted episode portion will be tailored to reflect some of the choices made in your interactive playthrough. Huh. If you watch the show before playing, some elements in the interactive portions may be presented differently than if you played first."
Huh.
So you have that 58% sort of 42% split that they have on some of the decisions that you make in their games will like actually impact the TV show.
I'm guessing that's what's going to happen.
Seems like it, right?
I'm guessing.
That's got to be a lot of work for the showrunners, though.
Yeah.
So, well, I think at least that's a good way to use the episodic content in video games, because it gives you a reason for it to be split into episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like Enrique, feel like, you know, the expectation and the community build up and the theories and all that stuff doesn't outweigh the cost of having no idea when the next one's coming out, then at least that gives you a reason to participate.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
If I understand it correctly, it's not so much that you dislike the format, it's just that you mostly dislike the inconsistency that's associated with the release of every episode.
I mean, it ties to the format, and like the format ties into the inconsistency. I just, like I said, I don't like that the control of how I consume the media is taken away from me.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't see what they gain by that entirely. I mean, I know that we've listed some benefits and stuff like that, but compared to, like, none of those really seem like enough. Like, if I was developing a video game, like, that would drive my decision to make it episodic. And I'm not sure. Maybe it's just the extra time in between to work on the next episode. Like, maybe they had to do that at the beginning because each episode financed the next one or something.
Yeah, I mean,
like that.
Like the cynic in me wants to say that it's almost not a money scam, but it's a way of procuring funds for the next installment kind of thing.
Yeah.
It could be. Or, I mean, it could be that they said, you know, hey, check this out. Like, we leave people on cliffhangers, and that gets people excited, and it's an awesome way to experience a story.
Yeah, get you more invested. Get you way more invested.
In video games. So, it's interesting. An interesting problem.
I think it's been used to great effect in the past. Look at The Walking Dead. Look at how successful that first season was.
Yep, and, I mean, I was super sick for the second season, but again, I bought it after it finished.
Fair enough. So
it's a brand new format with trade-offs, like anything else, and it'll be interesting to see where they take it from here.
I'm interested to see where Telltale and Marvel are going to bring this to. That sounds interesting. Yeah,
I'll remember that.
So, pre-orders, huh? They're
a thing.
Yeah, hugely contentious topic these days, with people very strongly urging each other not to pre-order. So where do we stand? What do you guys think?
I don't really have a problem with it, but that's just because I live in the Netherlands, and when I pre-order something, there's basically no risk involved. I can pre-order something, and I only have to pay it within 2 weeks of me actually getting the thing. So when I get it, I don't open it. I look up reviews and stuff. If the review's saying that it works well, then I open it and play it, and I've got all the pre-order bonuses. If people tell me that it's shit, it doesn't run well, I send it back. I haven't lost any money, nothing, no risk involved. But that
is a way better system than what we have.
Yeah, but it's still pre-order, so I'm still scum.
Yeah, reverse pre-order jujitsu going on over there. But to take it back and look at the history of pre-orders, I suppose we go all the way back to when games were on carts, and if you didn't pre-order, it was entirely possible that you could not get a copy of that game.
True.
With Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo, I forgot to pre-order it, and I didn't get to play it until like 2 months later, because it was actually sold out everywhere.
Yeah, it's weird that pre-orders for digital content are still a thing, or is still a thing, because it's not like digital stuff is finite, is infinite. Or is finite, it is infinite.
Exactly. And then so we moved forward kind of past that to where games flooded the market. You could get them at every big box store, and there was always a copy if you wanted to have it on day one. And I think that's when we saw pre-order incentives start to creep in. The little extra things that you could get by pre-ordering to motivate people to do something that they really had no reason to do. And then even now, further in the future, we've reached a point where companies sort of rely on pre-orders in a way that they know that they have made a sale if they can make a pre-order. So they have every sort of reason to cash in on hype and sort of generate a large marketing campaign in order to make the most money off people who really can't do anything after the fact.
Aren't pre-orders sort of handy for shops? Because you go to shops usually to pre-order them, and then they order the games, right?
Exactly.
They buy it in bulk, so they know how much they have to order.
Yes and no to a degree. And I'm saying this from a previous retail employee of a game store that I will not name. I will just call it G-Stop. No, wait, that's too obvious. Game S. But,
all right.
No, it's kind of funny because at one point, yes, the pre-order system was kind of used to help allocate how many copies you were going to get. And they do that still to a degree with collector's editions, where it's a finite copy, and that's how they know, hey, we're going to send this many out. The pre-orders let us know how many we're to send to your store. But for most titles, honestly, they just send you a huge shipment of it, to the point where even district managers within the different districts would tell employees, hey, come release night, fuck pre-orders, just sell to anybody that walks in.
And what happens if less people? What happens if you're not sold out, or a lot less people buy the actual game? Can you just send them back to the developer?
No, you keep it. Like, it sits in your back room until you sell through, and then you get restocked. And I mean, for bigger title releases like Call of Duty, obviously, Batman. I mean, like, they send you a bulk number of copies just because, hey, they know it's going to sell.
That might have been a stupid question, but I've never worked in retail, so I don't really know how that.
Yeah, no, because the way it works is like the actual company, like the big company itself, corporate office, will buy certain number of million units from like the developer or publishing company. And then they allocate those to the individual stores. Okay. Which is why like a refund thing isn't that big of a deal, because, like the publisher already has their money from the corporate office. At that point, when you're getting your refund, you're just getting your refund from the brick and mortar store.
All right. And then didn't know that. It's if you're buying games on Steam nowadays, though, it doesn't really matter anymore because there's not really a risk involved. Like you could now see with Batman Arkham Knight, if you pre-ordered that and the game was absolutely broken, or is absolutely broken to the point where they stopped selling it altogether, you can now just get a refund and no questions asked. So a part of the risk is just gone now for you as a consumer.
I mean, like, what effect do you think pre-ordering actually has now to a publisher?
It just makes your graphs look all pretty, and then you know how much potential units you've already sold. It's just I think it's just a statistic thing now than anything else.
Well, yeah, you can use it to infer like how long the tail of a game is going to be, and you can use it to infer like the penetration rate that you've achieved versus how many consoles are out there. Things like that. Most of the advantages are on their side. I mean, we're lucky that they even want to throw in some skins and stuff, because if they didn't, I don't think anybody would pre-order. I'm not exactly sure what the reason to do it is outside of the bonus content.
Well, isn't it so that sometimes, or at most AAA games, you've got different editions that you can order or can pre-order, and that tie to specific franchises or stores?
Yeah, I know they do that with like some of the pre-order bonuses, where there's like Batman Arkham Knight is very guilty of this, where each individual retail store had their own pre-order bonus. And I mean, and you see that a lot for bigger games. Like I think Halo 4 had it as well, where Best Buy had a certain skin and GameStop has a certain skin and mission, and this store, Target has its own separate kind of thing. So I mean, you see that a lot. But again, that ties back to, it's like this overall realization that consumers technically don't have any kind of reason to pre-order anymore, because the copies will be plentiful. They can get their hands on the game regardless. There's this competition between retailers as it is, so you can walk down the street to any store and pick it up. So now it's a matter of these retailers getting into these deals with the publishers to say, hey, we need an incentive to get people to come to our store. So, and I think that's where you start seeing more of the pre-order bonuses. So I don't think it's at least for the brick and mortar stores and physical copies, it's not so much the publisher, but rather the individual retailer, because it seals in the sale of that product to that particular location.
Or at least it used to be, because due to recent developments, the power has sort of been taken away from developers in terms of pre-orders, because now consumers have the option of returning it when they want to, even on digital content, which is quite good.
But like I said again, I think the pre-orders for a digital product fall under a different consideration than they do for like a physical product, because like I was saying before, with the physical copies, the publisher will sell their copies to the corporate office regardless of how many people pre-order it. Right. So they make their money either way. It's just a matter of, at that point, the corporate office sending it to however many stores or who wants it. With the digital ones, though, it's a completely different beast, because for there, you actually have the publisher getting the direct sales from it. And that's where you see a lot of contention, people saying, don't bother, people saying, don't pre-order this game, vote with your wallets. But I'm kind of wondering, what effect does that actually have now? For if somebody were to completely boycott a pre-order of a game, would that even be effective?
Well, to be honest, pre-orders have gone up this year as opposed to the other years. Yeah, I've got the USA pre-order chart here in front of me. From the 3rd of November 2012, there were over 1.8 million pre-orders for Halo 4. The year after that, in December 2013, there were 208,000 pre-orders for Destiny on the PS4. 2014, in November, The Order 1866, 137,000 pre-orders, so steadily dropping. And then you have the 11th of April, which is the newest I could find, 241,000 pre-orders for Batman Arkham Knight. And we all know how that turned out.
But I mean, is that indicative of the actual pre-order culture in general, or is that just more tied specifically to those games?
Here's the thing. This is my theory. I think not enough people actually care what happens to the gaming industry. They just have gaming as a hobby, and they don't care. They see a way to get a few bonuses if they pre-order it, shell out some money up front, and they just do it. Not a lot of people actually care what the consequences might be. It sort of has to be. It has to be that.
And a lot of those people who are willing to do that for those bonuses and things are going to be people who play primarily on consoles.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I do have to note that. I do pre-order. Like I said, there's no real risk involved, but I only do it on consoles most of the time as well.
Yeah, well, you're in a unique situation because with us, if I pre-order something and I take it home and they're not going to let me return it, basically. Or if I can, I'm only going to get store credit. So for us in the US, it's a different environment completely. And we have very, very little incentive to pre-order.
That's a kick in the consumer rights.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time, I mean, it's like the stuff they offer for pre-orders isn't even that great anyways. Like, it's not enough to make me want to do that. I mean, the last game I pre-ordered was, I think it was Guild Wars 2, and that's only because first I trusted ArenaNet based on their previous game, and second it was because I really wanted to beta test the game. I was like, foaming at the mouth at a chance to play Guild Wars 2 because I'd been waiting 5 years for it.
That's a pretty good incentive.
Yeah, and I think that was a great incentive, and they were really responsive to the community who beta tested the game, and I think that was one instance where the pre-order was worth it. But I don't think most games, a few extra skins that everyone's going to have anyways, because everyone else is going to pre-order to get them, so they're not even going to be valuable. I mean, that's a
good point, and that's a good point, actually. You pre-ordered it because you trusted the developer. That's what I do as well. Usually just pre-order games from series or franchises that I already like. So yeah, I can definitely see why.
But the problem is
easier for you.
There's even times where that bonus content can actually break the game, though. Like, you'll get an item that the pre-order bonus item is too powerful.
Yeah,
I hate that.
You've thrown off the whole game. That's a huge bummer. And then the stuff like where they fragment the skins out to different places is just a nightmare if you're somebody who's kind of a completionist as far as game content is concerned. Right. Yeah. It makes sense for them, but they're screwing us over with that stuff, and I don't think that we should encourage it.
Taking it back a bit, though, I honestly think we place a lot less emphasis on these pre-order bonuses than we like to pretend we do. I feel like it's more of a case where people have this almost ambivalence towards pre-ordering, where their mentality is, I'm going to buy the game anyway. These pre-order bonuses are just like a side thing, might as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant with a lot of people just don't care.
So you think that even if they like put out a game tomorrow, no pre-order bonuses, pre-order it if you want, that you'd see about the same numbers?
I would say roughly. Like I said, just because it's almost like a habitual thing now where people have it in their minds, and you see it a lot with like the digital sales, because I can't think of that many pre-order bonuses that get offered, at least for digital sales. I think people just fall into the mentality of, hey, I'm going to buy this game anyway, might as well just pay for it now.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Plus, it's a convenience thing as well, isn't it? If you're into physical releases, you can just pre-order it, put it out of your mind, and one day it just falls on your doormat.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Or when it's or when it's digital stuff, stuff starts preloading when it's available. And again, it's a peace of mind thing. It just happens automatically, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Worrying is not the right word, but
oddly enough, for me, the only items that I've pre-ordered are physical copies of certain games. Like I think. When XCOM came out, I pre-ordered because they had like that cool, unique PC like Commander's Edition that came with the map and the patches and stuff, and I thought it was a really fun collector's items. I pre-ordered The Witcher 3 on both PC.
I think you got Civ 4 when you pre-ordered XCOM 2. I think you got Civ 4, if I remember right.
Did you? Maybe, I don't remember. I just remember like
you have to double check that.
But I don't know. Like I like pre-ordering a lot. For me, it's just more of a collector's item thing. Where like when they have like really cool little knickknacks, for me, like I like collecting it, especially if I'm a fan of the series. But again, it falls into that category of, hey, I know I'm going to buy this game regardless, so I might as well get this really cool little thing on the side of it.
But so that's a fair trade-off. You know, like, you understand you're getting benefits, so you're willing to give them benefits in return. I think that the recent backlash against pre-orders has come about because you're seeing people get burned by pre-orders more in the last 2 years than they ever had been before. So that fair trade-off system is starting to lean farther and farther into their favor, and now people are, you see the backlash, you know, like, stop pre-ordering because they're getting more benefit out of it than we are.
Yeah, and again, it's like I said earlier during like the what have you been playing section, I honestly think that we would not be getting into this position now if Steam refunds had not become a thing. I think because consumers finally have that say where they can, you know, monetarily voice their displeasure with their game by directly taking the money out of the publisher's hands, like, after the fact. I think it's when we're starting to see, you know, more awareness in terms of players saying, "Hey, we shouldn't pre-order because this shit's ridiculous."
So here's a question: with Steam refunds becoming a thing, do you think we see more pre-orders?
Might be, yeah, because the bar for entry is now a lot lower. Like, there's essentially no... Well, there's still risk involved, obviously, but there's a lot less risk now.
And do you think that they start adding maybe even more interesting pre-order bonus content to get people to pre-order? Because in a world where you can just refund it if it sucks, that sort of changes the climate completely. And I wonder if more people, like... You can't get screwed over, right? So the whole no pre-order thing doesn't matter if they can't screw you.
Yeah, exactly. I think the coming weeks are going to, you know, show us if Steam refunds are going to have that effect. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
You know, I didn't actually think about that. You're right. Just because, like I said, because it almost takes the responsibility out of your hands at that point, because at that point, you don't have any kind of risk on your behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And it almost goes the other way. Like, whereas they've been getting more benefit off of us, like, we can now get more benefit off of them. And I wonder if you'll even see a point where maybe they don't even bother making all that weird retail-specific pre-order bonus content, at least, you know, in the sort of market of Steam, which I guess it wouldn't be retail-specific, it'd be Steam-specific. But I wonder if they'd stop spending the resources to do that because the pre-order numbers almost don't matter anymore.
I don't think they will, just because, and we've seen this time and time again with different companies, especially more recently, like CD Projekt Red, and even though they're primarily a PC developer, out of the mouth of babes, they've said, hey, the bulk of our money, honestly, income, it comes from console sales, and console sales are a good chunk of them. I'd say you buy them from brick and mortar stores. So at that point, I don't think the pre-order bonuses necessarily get made for you per se. They get made for the actual store. You know, you're going to see, if anything, you're going to see more focus on that and more focus on these individual, like, retail exclusive things, because hey, that's how you convince, you know, store A to buy this many units because we're going to give them this specific item.
Right, they have to. And then also the move from actual physical to digital comes into play here too. Like, that has an effect on the pre-order climate, because if they want to move physical copies, they, you know, are going to have to either start adding incentives, or they're going to have to move away from selling as many physical copies.
Or what might happen, and I hope that this is going to happen, developers are going to think twice before they're going to release a broken game.
No,
because
ideally.
That would mean lost money. I know, in a perfect world, all I know is Ubisoft is probably sweating right now, because Unity was fucking despicable, and in a couple of months a new Assassin's Creed is going to be released, and
But here's the thing, though. I don't think it's so much the fault of the developer rather than the publishers themselves, because I think, if anything, we might see a sudden surgence of this because of that, because of the fact that it suddenly becomes like a time game where, hey, we need to make sure we can get this game out as fast as possible to get as much money in as quickly as possible. So we might end up seeing more, not necessarily broken games, but more half-assed games where they're just throwing it out and it's like, hey, we'll patch it later, get as many pre-orders as we can in right now, because it's a matter of cashing in as quickly.
I think people will catch on to that pretty quickly if they're going to do that.
Here's a question. In the Steam refunds, what is the time limit on that? It's 2 hours, and what's the length? Like 2 weeks?
14 days.
2 hours or 14 days, whichever comes first.
So if games start, or, you know, if these companies start saying, hey, pre-order, are you going to be able to refund the game if the pre-order lasts for more than 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah. That time only... You know, the clock starts ticking once the game is actually released.
I was going to say, it'd be really shitty if a game released the game 15 days after the pre-order.
Yeah, they wish that they could
Yeah.
do that, but no.
Okay.
Yeah, or you'll see them making it just functional enough that, they can hold off and sort of stem the tide of refunds, but at least they have to think about that. Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's something we haven't had on our side before.
Well, you've seen a couple of other shops overriding that anyway. Green Man Gaming, they said that they would allow refunds for Arkham Knight no matter how long you've been playing it, on PC at least.
They said, but I think the caveat for that was if Rocksteady didn't have the issues fixed by the end of the week, then that
the first patch,
the window would be open.
See, that's interesting because the retailer trumps the developer in that respect.
It is. So I don't know, man. Like, why do we pre-order? Like, why do we do that from here on out? I don't understand exactly why. It's like
there's no good reason.
There's not like a time thing. Like, you don't have to pre-order to play it on day one. It's all in just whatever value they want to add to it with their bonuses and things.
The only thing I can see adding is maybe it's part of the hype for some people, but which I see that, but it's like that's not enough for me to pre-order a game blind,
Well, yeah, especially when you can have it exactly at release, have the same experience, like, minus whatever little doodads they want to throw on it.
Honestly, I feel like it's also just almost this ingrained habit that we have now, because even like with, I had Batman Arkham Knight on PC, didn't work, I got my refund, I walked over to GameStop to grab the PS4 version, and I traded some games in and had some extra money, and then, the salesman goes like, hey, if you want to pre-order, and instinctively I'm like, you know what, throw $5 down on this game, what the hell? And I didn't even, it was almost like a reflex. I didn't even think about it.
So it's like a cultural sort of ingrained kind of thing?
Maybe it depends where you buy it.
What did you get out of that transaction? Was it just something that you were used to? Like, no mental thought applied, just like, yeah, sure, all right?
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, I honestly, I have never pre-ordered anything from any other retailer than GameStop. And for me, it's just because it's just the habit. I used to work at a GameStop. We used to pre-order our titles at GameStop. Now that I don't work there anymore, I still have that association with. Yeah. You want to pre-order something? I'm like, I have $5 left over from my trade, might as well. Whereas, if I go to Best Buy, never has the thought of pre-ordering something at Best Buy crossed my mind. Same with like a Target or a Walmart. Like it's like that's not even an issue. But for whatever reason, just I guess the whole cultural concept of GameStop, you walk in, pre-order, why not?
Yeah, I mean, midnight releases were a thing not that long ago.
Yeah, and that makes me sad that we're using that in the past tense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they were great.
Even now, you could go to a midnight release without pre-ordering and still get a copy of the game.
Yeah, like I said,
now,
and because it's a corporate mandate. They tell you, hey, don't worry about pre-orders. Just we'll send you more copies of the game. Just sell to whoever's there. So it takes one less reason to pre-order away from people.
In the end, there's no real reason to pre-order a game, but if you do, it's your own responsibility, and not enough people seem to care about the consequences that pre-ordering could have on the industry at large. But then again, we've got more power now as gamers than we had last year or the year before that, so that's good.
I think it's just, honestly, bad pre-ordering habits are hard to break.
All right. Well, before we wrap up the podcast, we actually have another question this week. Ooh. Yeah, and this one was sent in by Thean, and the question is, do younger gamers have an obligation to play the older classics before their time? What do you think?
That's a good question.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's something I've definitely thought about a lot. I mean, trying to raise my daughter and how important video games are to me and thinking about how I want to expose her to that world. But I mean, I think people that just come to video games in general, I think they should play the older titles because you get a Hall of Fame like mechanics showcase because all the great games have already floated to the top of the catalog. So you don't have to like ride through the dreck.
I think it depends on like what degree of involvement you want to have in or the new generation wants to have in the gaming community. I think if they definitely want to be a kind of a bigger part of it, they definitely do have a responsibility because, like you said, you get to see kind of like the groundwork that was laid for all the games of today. You get to see like the cool mechanics, the first implementation of like twitch shooting, the first implementation of like the whole platform or what that was. So I think it's definitely owed to themselves. But somebody that just has kind of like a passing interest in it, I mean, I wouldn't hold it against them.
I somewhat disagree because you don't need to watch all the classic movies in order to love film as a medium. You don't need to read the first book to enjoy really good literature today. And I've played lots of games, but I skipped a lot of the classics as well. You know, a ton of Mario games I've never played. I've never played Castlevania, but I still love video games, and I'm quite involved in the community. So I don't think you have an obligation to play the old ones if you don't want to. You can be as involved in the community without having played all those.
I do believe, though, that if you were to go back and play those older titles, you would gain a little bit more of appreciation of what you currently have.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You'd also increase your overall video game sense, too, like as far as your ability to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes with video games, and also
the roots.
To be a part of the conversation. It's not like it's not like movies or books that have gone on for such a very long period of time. You can get the high notes of the history of video games in just a few months. And so if you wanted to have a conversation with somebody and one of those games happened to be like a good example of something they were trying to talk about, it'd be cool to be on their level as far as that stuff goes. But that's all very much more academic. Like, I wouldn't say that they should go back for them and play them for enjoyment, like outside of a handful of titles that I think are really fun that never got done again, because there's some stuff on the NES that has creative mechanics that never showed back up. So, but outside of that small handful of titles, I wouldn't say that they had to play them for fun, but for more of like a kind of academic sense.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in terms of like film, because I've studied film a little bit, and I think you don't need to go back and watch all the classic films to be a fan of film now. But I do think going back, kind of like you said, how playing old games you wouldn't necessarily play them for fun. It's like I watched like the movie Double Indemnity is a movie from I think the 50s, and it's like that movie gave me greater appreciation for like the film noir style and that kind of thing, but I'm never going to watch it again because it gave me a greater appreciation for that kind of film, it wasn't that entertaining for me. And I think it's the same way with games. It's like I only had a Game Boy until I was almost in high school, and so there's a ton of games I haven't played, and I mean, in my head, I kind of feel guilty. It's like I need to go back and play these games, but at the same time, it's like I don't want to because they don't seem that fun. And I guess I should to get that appreciation, but I mean, it's not super enticing.
I mean, maybe, but you're going to have people like me who have ridden that whole wave all the way up who are going to insist that, man, you got to play these games because there's things there that you're going to see that you won't see anywhere else, and you're going to love it, and it's like amazing. I may or may not be wrong. That's just my personal opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I could be totally wrong, but I still think you should. I've got a binder laid out, like how I want to introduce my daughter to video games, like up through all the consoles to current before I put her on anything current.
Raising them right.
Yeah, video game dad.
Raising them right.
But that's just because I want to be able to talk to her on that level, because video games are such a big part of my life.
Yeah, I get that, but I don't think it's an obligation if you don't really want to.
Yeah, of course. I think obligation is maybe a very strong word. Like, don't talk to me about video games unless you've done this. Nobody's that closed-minded. I hope not.
Yeah. Exactly, and even though I didn't play a lot of the classic games, I can still talk about them because I've seen other people talk about it, or I've seen videos about it, so I know what they're about. Mm-hmm. But I have no desire to go back and actually play them if they don't look fun to me, and I can still join in on the conversation.
That's a good
because
point.
I'm at least a little bit educated on the subject, even though I have no first-hand experience.
I mean, like I said, I think it definitely depends on how in-depth you want to get into it, because I'm on the same boat with Sam. Like, there's just certain games that, and it's because I've grown up with the medium, that I almost feel like I want to tell them, like, hey, man, you have to go back and experience this because, it'll make you have a bigger appreciation for, certain things are now. Like, for me, one of the reasons that I love gaming in general is because of the sense of the community that it creates. And, like, one of the games I immediately relate to that is the original Myst when it first came out, and how difficult that game was. And there was entire communities that formed around that game, trying to piece together the lore and the puzzles and kind of create walkthroughs for it. So, I mean, it's, like I said, for me, it's that approach that, hey, you'll gain a better understanding now if you get to experience the history of it.
Every generation is going to have its classics. And people who are just, getting into gaming now, who are like 9, 10, something like that, they'll view other games as classics and games that you absolutely have to experience. And they won't really look back at the 80s or the 90s, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they do have the advantage of, if they decide to approach the back catalog, they don't have to play all the bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's I think it is an obligation if you want to study games. If same like I said, same thing with film. If you want to study film, you need to go all the way back to when film started, and you don't have to watch every silent film, but you need to watch something like Modern Times, something like that, and you just to get an understanding. So if you're interested in academically studying games as a medium, I think you are obligated to play the highlights of early titles.
Well, if you're studying it, then that is a completely different matter, isn't it? If you're just a gamer who's really invested in games, there's no obligation to go back. If you're studying games, or if you want to make games, then that basis is obviously very important.
Yeah.
But
Are they obligated to try them and see if they enjoy them? What do you think about that? Like, not like they're obligated to play through the whole thing, but are they obligated maybe is too strong a word, but should they be encouraged to dip their toes in to the past generations and see maybe if there's anything they like back there?
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt.
No.
It's true. I agree with you. But it's,
I'd say can't hurt. I'd agree with that sentiment.
nobody's obligated to do anything they don't want to do. But if you want to play some older video games, keep the dream alive. I mean, I'd encourage it. All right. Hopefully that wraps up that question, and we will put a bow on this episode. So thank you, everybody, for coming out and listening to episode 10 of the Select Characters podcast. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Select Podcast. And send us some emails, send us some questions, send us some topics, stuff you want to hear us talk about. You can send those to selectcharacters@gmail.com, or you can send them to our ask.fm/select characters. We got a little bit of news coming up. We're going to be moving off of the True Gaming subreddit. We kind of want to expand to some other creative pursuits. We want to start doing some YouTube videos and a few other things that just would help us feel more creative. So we're going to move off of True Gaming. We're going to move on to our own subreddit at /r/select characters, and we'll also be hosted on gamerassaultweekly.com. And we're going to start putting up a lot more content in our YouTube channel, as well as issuing the podcast every week. This won't stop. This will continue indefinitely, hopefully. But we want to bring you guys a wider range of exploration into the things in the gaming universe, keeping it in line with the tone of what we normally do. So stay tuned. We've got some exciting things ahead, and I hope you stick around.